So I guess we just start this thing, huh?
I guess so. Hello.
Hello. And hello. This is Homelife Before Extraordinary Impact podcast. I'm Matt Barrios.
And I'm Lindsay Barrios.
And on the show, we help you design a home life for growth, connection, and making your greatest impact in the world.
Which is kind of amazing.
It's kind of amazing. Like,
It's
this
really
is a great show.
You should watch it.
You should watch it. You should listen to it. You should subscribe. I mean, all
All
of
the
it.
things.
We'll tell you about all that.
But why? Like, what is home life, babe? I mean,
Okay.
who even talks about home life?
Okay, yeah. I mean, like home life, it's...
Is it a word?
It's two words smushed into one. All right, that's home life. So home life, home life is everything that happens like within the walls of your apartment, your home, your property. If you've got like a front yard or backyard, like we don't have
Some
a
of
front
those
yard or backyard. We live in a small apartment in San Francisco, so we don't have that sort of thing. But it encompasses everything from architecture, interior design, like that stuff's kind of visual, but also your relationship to your possessions, your relationships with people
And the people in your
Yes,
home.
yes.
Yeah. So where does this, like, I think as we were on this journey of discovering, like, why home life? Like, why are we delving into this? Why does this matter for everyone else to, like, think about how we design that, how we think intentionally about it? Kind of where did that start for you?
Story time. Okay, so I
love your stories.
thank you.
I did fall in love with you.
Our nephews love our story. my
That's
stories
true.
too.
He has one number one storyteller in the family.
Which is a big deal. So so what I'm getting back into that like moment back in probably whatever that was, around 2010 or something, finishing up college.
Yeah.
I had just gotten out of a relationship, and a lot of just like my hopes for the future were really wrapped up in all that. And I remember going home and I was really heartbroken and just kind of like having a rough time. Like,
It's so hard.
Yeah, it was a tough time in my life. And I remember going home, visiting my parents, and at one point they're like, we're all sitting on the couch together, my mom on one side, my dad on the other, and I'm just telling them like how much my life had fallen apart, basically. And it's like, man, this feels really vulnerable to actually say in front of my camera in some ways, but yeah, and they just like, they were just there for me. And they supported me and, held on to me and, loved me.
Anne and Henry, we love you.
Yeah, Anne and Henry Barrios, some saints, so, and that just like imprinted this experience for me of, wow, home can be this place, like a couch can be a place of like really amazing connection.
Deep love and comfort and presence.
Yeah, exactly. And, and then fast forward, I go through all of my 20s, like as a bachelor, and I'm just like trying to figure out like, what do I do with my life and blah, 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 blah. And I'm living in a random in-law unit in Oakland downstairs.
Very cold.
It was very cold.
It was very cold.
It was so cold all the time. And I remember having this this like moment of awareness of like, okay, I know I'm a bachelor, but I'm also ready to settle down, and I don't want to like, perpetually be in bachelor mode, right?
Yes, you know those people.
I do know those people, and
it's a way of life.
Yeah, and it's just like the kind of thing where I'm like, I felt like an intentional choice happened in me of like, I'm going to choose to like literally buy a decent couch that I can take into the next space, the next like phase of life with a partner, with a family, whatever, right? And I'm going to get like good dishes and good silverware that all match, instead of like random Goodwill stuff or whatever, right? And it's funny, but like it took a while for me to get there to the point of thinking, oh, actually, I need to like create a space for the life that I want to have.
Yeah.
It's like creating a clearing so that like there's a landing pad for you know, you to arrive in. Right?
Me.
Yeah.
Who did not have any real dishes.
I got you covered.
Or a good couch. So it was a good thing.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
And I mean, like around that time, that's when you and I started. Well, I mean, we were friends for a long time before, but like that's when you and I started seeing each other.
Yeah.
And I mean, what do you remember in that time?
Yeah, I mean, I actually remember you telling me about this and feeling like, ooh, that's kind of a lot. But also, yeah, but also like the mentality of it, I think was like a helpful shift for you from my perspective of being kind of like, okay, how do I basically not control what's coming next, but so into the life that you wanted to have and make space
Plant
for
seeds. Because I want to see it grow, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think for me, like I had a different approach, you know. I definitely had like all of my furniture was given to me by the like last tenant in the apartment kind of thing, and or off the streets of Boston or New York.
Yeah.
But I think it was noticeable in coming to your home, even to visit the first few times, that it didn't feel like a disaster or like a place that people couldn't really live like a real adult life in, which some bachelor pads do feel like. Seriously. So there was like some things on the walls and like just the space felt like, oh yeah, this is the place. I mean, I do think it helped me kind of imagine a concept of like home together, just being with you in that space.
Yeah, crazy. And I remember us like taking a walk, and we went to the Rose Garden, walked over to the Rose Garden in Oakland, and we had this conversation.
Love that place.
So beautiful. So many great memories. Like, and I do think like there's something about places in walking distance to your home that also can take on a feeling of home too.
Absolutely.
But yeah, at any rate, you and I like had this long conversation early on in dating. And
Matt is a big like future thinker and dreamer. You are just completely like so good at thinking ahead and like orienting towards the things you want ahead. I think it took me a little aback. Totally. Because I'm like, I'm in the moment. Like, we're just dating. We're exploring this. This is good. But I was like, oh, we're going to talk about our future hopes and dreams of what this could be if it worked out now. But it ended up being such a sweet thing. Like, even though I think initially I was like, whoa, okay, let me think about this. I think that conversation of, we got into this conversation in the Rose Garden in this beautiful place, and I think you asked something like, if this worked out, if this is like the best it could be, like what are the unique things that we would like be able to create together, you and me?
Yeah.
And let's just talk and dream about that a little bit. And and so we had this conversation that was just like really honest and vulnerable about like what do we want to see long term, and who are we, and what would that bring into like relationship and into like not just how we are together, but how we are in the world.
Yes, totally. And I think like the most incredible part about that conversation for me was almost like getting down to core things for you, for me.
Yeah.
And then like if there's just one thing we're about, right? Like if we just had to choose one thing that we stood for, each of us, what would that be? And I remember clearly you said deep connection with people. Like you're highly, highly relational. It's why you're such a great partner. And the thing that I actually said was home.
Yeah.
Right? Which I was even surprised by that answer, but it felt like so deeply true. Mm-hmm. And so now it's kind of like, okay, now we're at this moment, mid-30s. Yeah, mid-30s, and also just had a baby, and like we got a 1-year-old, like we've got our apartment here in San Francisco, and like I don't know, like our life has changed so much since then.
Yeah.
And those one things remain the same.
Yeah.
Like
it was kind of crazy to actually have that conversation more recently and kind of come back, remember like, oh yeah, how many years ago the thing we said that was like really core to who we were and what we like want to see and experience in the world are these things like deep connection and home, and how those things like remain at the center. Even, if some of our ideas have changed and we've changed, like these things are like solid, and they're things that we really are about. Yeah. Is like standing for that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean that is what we stand for. right? Like,
yeah. And like a home, I think a home, because it's this kind of together thing that we're creating, it's this home of like, of deep connection, like where home is a place of deep connection for whomever, and also a place of where that moves towards and pours into other people, that has this like positive social impact, that has a reach beyond the home.
Yes.
Yeah, which I think is something that we hold together as a real value.
We know how important it is, you know, to, and I mean, one of the things that like I would say we both personally are like at war with is like the loneliness epidemic, and just like I will not let loneliness be the way that, you know, our home functions, but I also won't let it be the way that like our friends' lives are marked. Or I mean, for you listening to this, like you watching this, like I'm at war with like your loneliness. Like I consider it my personal vendetta against loneliness in the world. And but instead of like isolation and all of this stuff, like there's an opportunity to be really deeply emotionally, practically, in a fun way, in humor, like all these ways, like in a true, lively, full way, connected to people.
Yeah.
And I think so much of that happens like in people's homes.
Yeah. I think there's such a specific like opportunity that is really different than even meeting up out and about. You know, I think it's great. I'm a person who likes to be out and about, but there's something about being in someone's space with them that is just more intimate, and there's like a really beautiful opportunity there. And I think to your point, like you don't just get this perfect, wonderful home life. I mean, not perfect. Yes. We're not going for perfect, but this wonderful, like deep, rich home life automatically. And I think as Matt's pointing out, like there are some real things that you have to like, that we're fighting for, that we're like contending for in our own lives, but like culturally and this broader sense of like, how do we have home be a place of like, of all of these things, of rest, of deep connection, of moving towards other people and hospitality, and all of these other things. And so another thing I think that in addition to the loneliness that we really have to kind of fight against is a spirit of kind of like, it's an approach to being home. It's like, okay, this is my time to be off, but also I don't really want to face all my unmet needs and like emotional desires. So I'm just going to distract. I'm going to get home. I'm going to like scroll through Instagram forever and watch whatever shows and kind of just
there's
like
a
zone
new season
out.
Of Drive to Survive on right now, and that is all we are doing every evening.
Right, it's easy. Right? So yeah, it happens. Like we all are kind of in that, and I think sometimes that can really replace things that are much more like satisfying. And sometimes it can be really like subconsciously even intentional as a way to avoid what else is going on with us, you know, or the thing that we don't have in our homes and in our lives.
Right, totally. And that has a myriad of ways that it shows up, right? Technology, entertainment, alcohol, whatever it might be, even like, you know, like workaholism and over exercising, under exercising. I mean, just like we are clever creatures.
Very good at avoiding ourselves.
Like, the ways that we are like so savvy at, you know, figuring out how to like, I don't know, just like numb away the troubles of life. And I think, you know, again, you already sort of mentioned this, but like this project is about like real home life. Yeah. Right. Like as much as like we hope it is like this little taste of like a dream life that that happens every once in a while. That's not like the way it actually works out. Like, but like having these moments of that so that it gives a little bit of inspiration and so on to face the hard times and all of that. So, and so it's kind of on that note, right? Like that, you know, as we're talking about like the things we're at war with, like first being the loneliness epidemic, second being this sort of distraction numbing thing, avoidance thing. The third is actually sort of a culture of self-improvement of like everything is up and to the right. All I do is win, no matter what. Yes. Right?
Yeah. And you learn very quickly with a baby that everything is not always up and to the right.
Exactly.
So and that's okay. And I think that's the thing that we want to make room for in this is like even as this is a space of being intentional and purposeful about how we do home and how we are at home, it's not a place of like, we actually have to actively fight the urge to just be like, all right, we're going to get our home life on a improvement schedule.
Yes,
and
yes,
this is how we are going to get to 100. And we will maintain 100 on some weird scale that we've come up with for ourselves.
And home can be a place of like extraordinary growth at the same time. And that's the thing. Like, I actually think like home, the growth tactics of home, like personal growth tactics of home, it flips everything upside down.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's like, you've got to rest really well, and you've got to like slow down and savor your meals, and you've got to like have some downtime to connect with your friends. Exactly. Yeah. Which is so different from like professional development or something like that, or, you know, getting so fit or blah, 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 you know, every number of things that like are just like hustle, hustle, drive, drive, go. You know?
Yeah. Part of the growth and the opportunity for us to experience the fullness, I think, at home is specifically through like cultivating this kind of rest and space, like, but in an intentional way, which is the interesting piece. I think sometimes we think of like doing things on purpose or intentionally in kind of a striving hustle, like, I have now added 10 things to my to-do list that I need to get done. And if I don't do it, I feel bad about it, you know? And so I think that's something we're trying to like fight against, is how do we make this space really intentionally beautiful and like create space for the things that we really want without it turning into just like beat myself up or whatever, like self-improvement process that's like actually just adding more stress to our lives.
Exactly. And to that point, I think one of the ways that strangely manifests in our world, this like improvement of self, is also to make it look to the world like you're always improving yourself. And you look so beautiful on Instagram.
I just grow constantly. I don't know about you.
Yeah, totally.
Very curious.
Naturally curious, very gifted in so many things. A hobbyist of all sorts, right? Like, that's the sort of stuff that, you know, like the Instagramification of life and the Disneyification of life, like it leads to, I think, so many people just feeling like there's no authentic connection happening. You know?
Yeah, and people don't even, I think, even to the point around like going into people's home, like people don't see each other at home often, except for like through Be Real or or whatever. You know, it's like, oh, like that's not a space that we're in together in this like open way. And so you can really like frame it in a particular way if you want or ignore it. And I think also the other part about home, I mean, the other way that you see into people's homes now is through Zoom, right? Work from home. Like, it's been this huge shift of like, now our work and our careers like happen in our homes. And I think that's been an interesting thing I've talked to a lot of people about, is like how to create any kind of differentiation in their lives from their work and their home. Because it's like, it could kind of just like work and just sort of take over. And you're like, literally my work at home desk space has now become my entire apartment. And that's it, you know? And is there an end of work and a space that is home too?
Yeah. And gosh, in a remote work from home world that, you know, so many people live in now, I think having an actual category for home life
that's different
from work.
Yes.
And it has like an actual definition to it rather than like it's not work.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Totally. Yeah.
I think it is actually really important. And I mean, part of this project is like, if we're really going to define home life and say what it looks like if it's really going well, like, and how to make that happen, right? Like, then you know, that's really helpful in a work from home world, right?
Yeah. Well, and to that, I think so many people that I know, at least, like, we have very clear answers to the question of like, oh, what is the like work life that you want? You know, and you can think about it in all sorts of different ways. You're like, oh, about the space that you're working in, how often you're working there. You can think about it relationally with your boss, with your coworkers. You think about it you know, like you think about it in this wide spectrum. And many people like have those answers on hand, you know, like they're ready.
Yeah.
But when you say like, oh, how is your home life? It's kind of like, do you mean my relationship? Do you mean like my like landlord? Like, I don't know. I think it's much less of a clear like concept. Like, we haven't spent the time like investing into like, oh, what would it look like to really have the home life we want? Where we've like been trained to do that about our work life. You know, since like being a young children, being like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? You know, like you're thinking about it. You're like, what do I want? Yeah.
What kind of home do you want to have when you grow up? Right? Like, maybe that's the question we're gonna, you know, raise our child with. You know, how wild. Yeah.
And in a way that like so extends beyond like, oh, I want my house with a picket fence, like those kinds of things.
Yes.
It's not that either. Or like, oh, here's this particular version of like a physical home that is the goal, right? Yes. And I think to that, like, I guess I just wanted to say too, like, we are also thinking about like, how does this reach people who are coming from different places and have different homes?
And reach is actually important to me. Like
that's true.
Yeah, like that's like, I mean, part of what we have in common is like we both are impact oriented people who like care about social impact and communal good and all that, right? And really, like, the mission of this is that 100 million people are gonna through this work that we're doing here, like, design a home that they can really consistently grow in, deeply connect in, and they're like fueled up to just like powerfully impact the world around them too. So 100 million.
Yes. So babe, how did you get to the 100 million?
It's a big number, and I like big numbers.
True.
But
true.
Also, no. I mean,
you were considering 7 billion, and then you decided like,
I pulled it back.
Maybe I should just
exactly
back up a little bit, but still have a round number that feels really big.
Something like that, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So
okay.
It was
so.
Well, I mean, I just thought like really practically about like
really
the way.
Very practically.
100 million is a practical number. All right. I thought really practically about just the way that, especially at people's homes, it has ripple effects generationally as well. I'm getting choked up weirdly thinking about this, but like, like that experience with my parents when they did that with me, that is now the way that, like, when you and I have some people over to our house, that's what we do with them.
Yeah.
Right. And it's because that's what my parents did with me.
Yeah.
Right. And they took care of me in a time where I was in need, and we've had people.
Yeah. And it's set an example, a model that we've been able to do, and it's had impact. Yeah.
And now it's been, dozens of people who are like our house guests come over for dinner, and then we
know who you are.
We care for them, and we give them tissues on our couch for a while, right? Like, and that's like, so part of what I'm imagining with 100 million people is like, I actually only need like 10 million people to get to 100. So
tell me more.
Well, I mean, if 10 million people are invested in 10 other people through their home,
there you go.
That's it. And if one. Yeah, and if that, I mean, it just multiplies, right? Look,
we'll provide. Will you provide
thing
a
I'm saying
spreadsheet?
Is math matters, and this is a math podcast.
Yes, and 100 million is a math-based number here. Exactly. Perfect. So, and I think that actually, though, to your point, is like it's like, yes, it's for like people and the people that come around them, and the flow, the ripple.
Yeah, the ripple effects. Yeah.
The ripple out around that. But it's also it's for a lot of different kinds of people.
Yes.
And I think that's something that we've talked about a lot, kind of in talking about what are we trying to do with this project, with Homelife design. Like, it's not for, I think in my experience, there's a lot of like home conversation that is very narrow. And so it's really only for like, oh, when we're talking about homes, we really mean that big house in the suburbs with your like, and the paint colors you're going to choose from whatever.
Right.
It's like all the home improvement shows or something.
Yeah.
Right.
This is not an HGTV show, right? Like,
right.
As much as like I can fall into an HGTV pit, like when I'm visiting my parents.
It's kind of fun,
it's
right?
Fun. It's great.
But it's feels like, I mean, I think that's like a very specific version of home. Yeah. And like, yes, you are welcome if that's your home and that's your approach to home. And also like, that's not our home. And it's not a lot of people we know's home. It doesn't look like that. It doesn't feel like that. And also we still have them, and this is still a place we live from. So I think that's one version of it that I see a lot.
Yeah.
And then now, as we become like parents, I think particularly, or even getting married, but particularly with kids, I think there's like like you think intentionally about your home as a parent only.
Right.
Like only like how you parent is the intentional part about your house and the way that you are at home. Yeah. And so it's very targeted for that, for people who are in that particular phase of life.
And that's not what this is for. This is not just for people who've own a house in the suburbs, not just for people who are married with kids or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Like, I'm interested in helping people who have got roommates, who live solo, who are taking care of aging parents, who, love their pets to death and live with a whole bunch of dogs, right? Like whatever it might be, like I want to
Some
help.
of our neighbors.
Yeah, right. Seriously. Oh, they're so sweet.
They're really great.
And their dogs are our baby's delight. But anyways, I digress to say that's the kind of person that we hope, feels welcome in this show. Like obviously we'll talk from our perspective, but even the people that we've already interviewed are not like a couple with kids, like how we are, right?
Exactly. I think that's something important to say. Like, yes, we are speaking from our own perspective as, relatively young marrieds with the baby.
Maybe.
Kind of, a little bit for city standards.
Sure.
But also like that's like a really intentional piece of this is like interviewing and part of the like fun and discovery of it is really like, what are other people's experiences of home and people who have very different types of home and not just like different, I guess, even in the ways that we've mentioned, but also like a lot of people who aren't from the US, aren't living here, like have a very different cultural experience of what home means also.
Yes.
And that's something we're exploring too.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, some of the people that I've already interviewed got to talk to a 27-year-old woman from Iran and just like, what is it like for her to be a woman growing up living in Tehran, right? Yeah. Like, so interesting, right? Or
and we get to learn
Danish like furniture designer. Yeah. Like, what was it like for him to grow up in Denmark and so on, right? Like, and so many other people. Got it. Like, I'm going to talk to a guy from Haiti and our friend from Nigeria, and just so on and so forth, right? Like, we are interested in global perspective on home. Also because, it unifies us to know that, like, no matter where you are on the planet in these 7 billion people, you want to have a place to lay your head at the end of the day that feels safe, feels connected, feels pleasant, more or less, right? At least, like, we are all hoping for that.
Yeah.
And I think
that's true. It's like whether or not we have it in a moment, right? Because we have plenty of people, we live here in the center of San Francisco. There's a lot of unhoused. A lot of our neighbors are unhoused and outside, but still, like, people know what home is like, and or long for it. I think if we haven't had it, I think when you experience it, even in someone else's home, there's something really like replenishing and beautiful about that, and necessary for people like of all kinds. And so it's really beautiful to hear, but also how different it can look. So it's that unifying factor, but also the diversity and the like discovery in the diversity of like, oh, maybe there's something for me in the way that you see home because you have a totally different cultural lens and experience that's actually like, I don't think I would have gotten there without that,
Yeah. And we get to hear those stories and we're trying to curate those stories for, you who are listening in order to like let it be inspiration for you, right? Like, oh, there's an alternative perspective out there. And like, maybe that does something new for me in the way that I could approach my home. And I guess just like two last like, buckets of people that we're thinking about who would be interested in listening to this, though everybody should be interested in listening to this. But, really creative people and impact oriented people, folks who are like, I know my home doesn't exist just for me. In fact, one of the foundational like principles, beliefs that I bring to this project is that when we're intentional about transforming our home life and we like invite people into that, it actually transforms their home lives. Like, and that's the like grassroots layer of what makes for an actual social change, So, and
it's a very like personal space, which I think is really, really unique too in terms of like place, right? And so even hearing these stories, it's like you get to hear people's like their stories, which is really beautiful and exciting.
Oh, and it's so fun. It's so fun. Yeah. I've loved doing these interviews. You know what? I'm just realizing we never really said who we are.
I mean, don't you know? We're just wildly famous and everyone already knows everything about us, babe.
I did tell them a very vulnerable story about me already, but
Okay, so who are you?
Well, I mean, I'll start with you because I love,
Aw, thanks.
I love you. So, I mean, you are highly intentional, highly relational person, lively, intellectual, went to Harvard.
Best intro ever.
Went to Harvard Law School. So, like I lose every argument automatically. That's not true. You're very kind. And you're a person who's like invested in through your career, like in many avenues throughout your career, invested in social impact. Like whether it was working with detained immigrant youth in like outside of San Francisco, or helping people immigrate to the United States, or like so many other things, like working in the Philippines with helping. Gosh, just like so many things. Like, so you're also a person who's lived all around the world too,
yes,
which is so cool.
Yes, not as much as I would like, but yes.
No. Maybe one day we'll change that. Sure, but so I mean, that's part of what I like about you is I think you're naturally prone to like a global perspective on things. You're analytical and relational at the same time, and
big people person.
Yeah, big people person. So yeah. So. Lindsay's legit.
That's me. Well, I mean, I do feel like you're probably the best person to be able to intro me that has ever introed me anywhere, because
I know you better than
know me.
Else,
Yep, you pretty much got it. So, anyways, so I can't fight too much on that. So for you too, I mean, I'm a big fan. I'm a real big fan of Matt. So much of a fan that I've been in my life forever with you. So.
That's and
I love it. So it's pretty big fan. I mean, that's the highest level of fandom, I'd say.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I guess I think a few things that feel like really important to this project that you bring to the table is your experience. Like, you've had a lot of experience working with people, both kind of one-on-one and in large group formats, talking about and leading people through processes of transformation.
Yeah.
And that's not like a very common thing. So, I mean, not only like you are trained and accredited as a kind of transformational coach, but you've really put that into practice with, I mean, probably over 1,000 people by now.
Yeah, over 1,000. I was actually like trying to count, like leading up to us talking, like considering the number of like large courses that I've run, like it's over 1,000 people by this point that I've got to invest in their transformation, right?
Yeah. And a lot of that, I think, is just a really unique process, because it's like, not only are we learning about something, I think one of the things that strikes me as really important that you bring from that is also like the translatability. Like, how do you take important concepts or ideas, or even, whatever out there? I think a lot of times we tend to read the books on self-improvement, but we don't do the things, right? I mean, there's a real barrier in our lives to actually doing it. Like, I can know about Marie Kondo, and let me tell you, my closet does not look like hers.
Nope.
And that's okay, but it's also like, okay, how do you, like, so that idea of like how to help people both really like knowing their story individually, personally, but also in a much bigger context, like how to give people tools to take kind of concepts or ideas or stories and distill them into like, how do we apply them? That's something that I think a skill that you have that's just really
thank you.
Beautiful, and like that has been honed through a lot of experience that you bring to this. And so I'm excited for you for that, because I think that's a real like value add to this that you bring.
Thank you.
And then also you've done a lot of like research and writing, and this is kind of research based.
This is completely original research that we're doing right now.
Tell us, like what does that even mean?
Okay, I mean, well, so I think the big picture, the difference between original research and kind of like reviewed research is basically original research goes to primary sources. So in this format, it's actually interviewing people in a way that is, methodical, in order to get out really clear insights that can, help direct a decision or inform a process or something like that, right? The other style of research is like, oh, somebody else wrote a book on this and I'm quoting their something, right? Like, but for an example of original research, Brene Brown's work is all original research. A
lot of interviewing.
Qualitative interview research that spliced every which direction in order to get to these insights about, leadership and vulnerability, right?
Right.
Now, imagine that sort of idea applied to designing Homelife, right? So we're interviewing folks.
So this is not just our thoughts.
No. I mean, we'll offer our thoughts because like we are committed to going through this process as people with personalities and lives, right? Like versus like pretending, to be
we have
a
nothing.
blank slate, completely unbiased, right? Like, but like, you know, to that point, like the research is intentional while also like we're participants who have a perspective and have things to say. So sometimes if I'm interviewing them and they tell a story that reminds me of a story, I'm going to tell a story, right? Like, and I think in the end, that ends up being a more personal connection, and kind of in some of the like research parlance of that, like ethnographic field research is about a person being a participant observer. So you go into a subculture, you have that interaction with somebody or something, and you are observing what's going on, but you're also fully participating as yourself, right? And so that's I'd say that's an angle on the research. This like qualitative research that's original. Third is journalism, since like we are actually publishing all of what we're finding too. So this has
write it.
Yeah, it's going to be written. It's going to be like the videos are going to be published online on podcasts and YouTube and everything, right? And lastly, the kind of like fourth research angle, I went through a UX research boot camp. So like learning the skills of design research, human-centered design. It's like this thing that's been a fascination for years, but I would just like jumped in and did the boot camp and all of that. And so I'm applying a lot of that tool set.
Yeah, which is so interesting to apply to this kind of a question, I think.
Yeah, right.
Because it is very user-centered, let's be honest. We are all the users, but in a different way.
Exactly. And design-centered research is, human-centered research is all about how do you create a thing so that it helps humans really be human, right?
Yeah.
And it's a wild thought, but I don't know if anybody's intentionally asked the question, how do we design home to help home really be a human place?
For humans. Yeah.
You know, so that humans can be the best humans, you know, they can, most expressive, most at home, like all of it, right? And so that's me nerding out about research for a little while, you know.
So in other words, Matt also has done a number of different kinds of research and has his background in writing as well. You taught writing at a college for a little bit. You've done like a lot of writing throughout your career. And so he's going to be putting those things to use, I think, in this. And then lastly, I think one of the things I'll just add about who you are and what you bring to this project is just that your own experience of home has looked like a lot of different things. And I think that's something you bring into this is, you know, you've lived in different cities. You've worked from home, which many of you have as well, but you've also, you know, transitioned into staying at home as a parent. And so home and like how that has looked, whether it was like single in this city or married in this way or working from home in this thing has looked really different, you know? The, you know, mother-in-law, like air unit, the freezing one in Oakland was one version, but then there's this other version. And so I think you also bring kind of the diversity of your own personal experiences of home and how it has looked. So I'm excited to kind of see, you know, how that all plays together with all the things that we get to hear from so many other people.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited about that. And, you know, and collecting those stories from other folks too. I think altogether, you know, by collecting these interviews, by digesting it for ourselves as well, I fully anticipate that like this is going to be genuinely like groundbreaking research on this really strange intersection between home, personal growth, and design.
Yeah.
Like, and, you know, plus like social impact, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Totally.
and I just don't know if people have like really researched that intersection between those things, like with much clarity. And that's, you know, you're
so
coming along for
that's what we're out
process,
to do.
right?
That's what we're out to do.
So, you know, now let's get nuts and bolts about this for 1 sec. So,
all right,
as we're finishing up. So, you're listening to this or watching this on, you know, some sort of podcast platform on YouTube or something like that. If you're watching on Spotify, prime time, because you can both watch it or you can listen to it.
I didn't even know this until recently.
It's pretty cool, you know. So, you know, that if I'm going to recommend a platform, that's what I'd recommend. So that's what you'll do is like listen to this, watch these interviews. Most of the interviews are going to be between me and a person who's you know, all around the world, everyday people, experts, all of that. And but then me and Lindsay are going to come back together, and that's where we're really going to digest our like my findings, right? Like, and think, okay, so this Danish woodworker who's a furniture designer, he says this about like the Danish philosophy of home.
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean for us? Do we want it to mean something, or are you going to take this or leave it, or what could that be, right?
Right.
So sometimes me and Lindsay are going to come back and
have some conversations.
Yeah,
talk about it.
Yeah, and it's going to be fun. So a lot of the conversations between me and Lindsay are going to be, not all, but a lot of them are going to be like premium subscriber only content. So
if you want me,
if you want,
you gotta pay for it.
If you want,
that sounds really bad.
That does not sound very good at all. All right, let's move past that. So, like this lovely face, this lovely voice. If you want to hear it, see it, then you will be needing to subscribe, become a paid subscriber. There's a link at the top of like the show notes or at the bottom, wherever I put them. There's a link in the show notes. Find the link in the show notes where it says that you can become a paid subscriber, and that will get you extra content. So Spotify, it'll naturally populate your feed if you subscribe for it. Other things are just like simple steps to get it on your iTunes feed or what have you. Very, very technical. If you're watching this on YouTube, glad you found us. Also, if you want the premium content, can't be found on YouTube. You got to, sign up for this on Spotify and stuff. So on that note, just like subscribe to this, follow the pages, all of it. Give us great reviews because we want this to be explosively valuable to like the whole world, and that means getting reach and just play the game of growth with us, please.
Yeah, I mean, we want you. I mean, that's part of it. Is we just want you to like come along for the journey, the exploration, the discovery of like, yeah, how does our home? I mean, we've discovered little things along the way. We'll share some of our discoveries, but also like this new. Hopefully, you kind of have this like new sense of like, oh, what else could my home be that like contributes to this kind of a connection and growth and impact? And so. And how can I learn from all sorts of people and just like hear interesting stories and then gain kind of insights from there. So it's going to look like, the podcast that will be Matt and these interviews, but also, us discussing some things at times for those premium subscribers. And then also there's other ways to follow along too. The
last kind of like big piece of this is there's going to be a companion newsletter for this. You can sign up for that at homelifedesignlab.com. Homelifedesignlab.com. So you can go sign up for it. You can sign up completely for free, and it will give you like a lot of information about what I'm finding through this process. If you prefer a written form versus an audio, visual form, right? There is an option also to become a premium subscriber to that, so that if you want to get the more distilled analysis, which honestly takes me a lot of time and like
very valuable.
I deserve to get paid for it. So if you want that stuff, then you'll have to sign up to be a premium subscriber on the newsletter. So you can start that whole process at homelifedesignlab.com. And I guess that's basically everything. Man, this was a super episode introducing all of this.
Yes. Come along, join us. We're so excited to like delve into this a little deeper. I feel like we've like gotten our feet wet now and like we're going for it. So come on. Let's figure this out together, and we can't wait to hear your thoughts, your like responses, comments, all that too.
Oh, you might be hearing some sirens because we're in San Francisco and it's a big city, and there was just a big loud fire truck that went by. So if you heard that, if you didn't, then these mics are much better than I knew that they were. But
welcome to our home.
Yeah, welcome to our home. So keep following along. Lots of gratitude, appreciation that you even, watch this first episode, share it with people who you think might benefit from it. And we'll be back next time.
Yeah. Appreciate you.